Absolutely, and that is a great place to just kind of dive right into everything. A hedge against inflation.
Yeah.
Where do you think the market is headed right now? We'll kind of backtrack into a whole bunch of different things, but
wow. I mean, I don't know. I think. Do you know Mark Halpern?
it sounds familiar.
Okay, so Mark Halpern's a good friend of mine, PhD chemist, and he'll tell you he's data retentive. So he looks at all the numbers on things. And as a PhD chemist, he definitely knows his numbers on things. I remember years ago when he started to get involved in real estate, he had each subdivision around him dialed in so well locally where it really points out from a data standpoint how local real estate is. And I mean, you deal in a number of different areas.
Yep.
So to answer that question, it goes back to, it's hyper local, right? As a general rule, you look at the national market, the statewide market, the county-wide market. In my area where I live, I mean, I track the data in school districts. I track Unionville, Chadds Ford, Westchester Area School District, Downingtown, and Kennett Consolidated School District.
Okay.
All Chester County primarily, but Westchester area and Unionville, Chadds Ford dip into parts of Delco. So looking at those markets, I mean, it's been really cool looking at the data. I've seen different changes. The things that I commonly track, and I have graphs for it, is list price to sale price, median price, days on market. I mean, the common things you would track, right? And you hear all the news and all the buzz, and you hear things, and then there's assumptions that are floating out in the populace about all this information that they're hearing. But man, when you look at the data, specifically in those markets, it's floated around 6 days on market consistently for like 2 years. And I always pull out new construction because new construction is a different animal to me, and I look at new construction separately. And going to, like when we talk about the beach markets, the shore markets, new construction skews that days on market
Massively, yeah. Sometimes they'll have it on there pre-construction anyway.
Right, yeah. So anyway, going back to the other market, days on market's been consistent. What I did see a change in was list price to sales price. So list price to sales price was X% over for a long time, and then it started hitting 100%, 100%, 100%, and it's been consistent and flat as a general rule. I tend to look at median versus averages because I like median better. I think it's a better pointer of what's going on really in reality.
Yep.
The interesting thing to me is, watching the market as any agent would every day, I definitely see more of the price drops. And I think that's really a function of, some reality is setting in now, I think.
Absolutely.
But it's really a function of people's perception. And think about the number of newer agents that have come into this business that have only come into this market. I've had a real estate license for 20 years.
Yep.
I remember 07, 08, 09, I remember all those years. And my family's been in real estate for 90 plus years. I'm genetically predisposed for the business, right? So what I'm seeing in the listings now is the price drops are happening, like what an agent would commonly do after a week, over 7 days, 10 days. Oh, it hasn't sold. We better drop the price, right?
Yeah.
So I'm seeing more of that. So it makes sense to me that things are selling for 100% of list price. But again, when you look at data, what's the quote? The quote, it was Mark Twain that said it, but he took the quote from Benjamin Disraeli. There's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. So when you look at data, you can massage that data and look at it in different ways.
You certainly can, because it's complicated, right? It's like there's a lot of variables and everything, and trying to come up with even averages or anything, it's like it's really challenging, you know. But as a global market, what do you foresee in the coming months, years? Like, just to come out and say, like so many people are just saying crash, 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 30% drops, 50% drops. Do you foresee any of that as even a possibility? Not a likelihood, but a possibility.
Well, anything's possible, right? And anything's possible. We've been through market cycles before. Do I think there's going to be some adjustments? Sure. Am I seeing some adjusting, some softening? Sure. Do I think we're going to see what we saw before? I don't think the same factors are at play that could cause that deep of a crash. We don't know where things are going to go with political climate that could affect that. We don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the NAR lawsuit. Because again, public perception versus reality is very different on that.
Of course.
People have some limited understanding, but I'm seeing a lot of agents trying to do content education to buyers out there to say that now we are required to do a buyer's agency agreement, and for the life of me, I don't know why you wouldn't do a buyer's agency agreement right out of the gate anyway. But now that it's going to be a requirement.
So can you break down that lawsuit in a nutshell for somebody that isn't aware of what's happening?
So now there's just formality, I guess you would say, to what's always existed. Commission's negotiable. When you're listing a property, the commission amount being charged is negotiable. There is no standard rate. It's always been negotiable. Buyers, what fee a buyer pays for your services as a buyer's agent, that's always been negotiable. It's still negotiable. The difference now is, as a result of the lawsuit, that wow, we're getting all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, craziness.
The difference now is that because of the lawsuit, there's some information out there in the public where there's this misperception that the sellers don't have to offer any commission to a buyer's agent. They never did. Yeah. They never had to. It was customary to do that to get more people to want to see the property.
It makes sense.
100%.
Yep.
Here's where I struggle with this whole thing. Fine with the commissions being negotiable. Fine even with really as an agent, if I'm representing a buyer, if a seller is not offering commission, a co-op commission, having a negotiation to discuss that. I mean, as a buyer's agent, it puts you in a little bit different position.
Sure.
You're trying to do your best for your buyer, and if somebody is saying to a seller, I'll take X% commission, and you're saying I want Y% commission, the deal's better maybe to go with this other buyer, although they may not be as qualified, or the deal might not be as good all around. So there's a lot of factors at play here.
Of course.
My concern is, in the era we're in of such heavy consumer protectionism, I definitely have some concerns about how the buyer is really protected out of all this. And I can't imagine, I'm sure it'll take a while to shake out and then be readjusted, but I can't imagine that the government would allow the exposure that I see for a buyer to be unfairly represented or not unrepresented. That's not the right word, but I there's got to be something.
I think unrepresented is a very real possibility. And
it is,
dude. In 10 years,
we're back to 1920, right, where we had no buyer's agency. It was just every agent represented the seller, and again in the era of consumer protectionism, there's no way they're allowing that. There's no way. There's got to be some mechanism in there to make sure that the consumer is protected.
Yeah,
because that was the purpose of buyer's agency and buyer's representation. Was to protect the consumer and separate that from all agents represent the seller.
Right. Which makes sense, but I really think with technology and everything, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I can't see a world 10 years from now where there's selling or buyer's agents. I don't see it. I don't know what that's going to look like. And maybe it's just going to be some mutation of what currently exists, and there's still going to be some sort of attorney that has to be involved on either side. Yeah. But I don't know, because so much of it does come down to your point, of public perception and everything.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And most of the public perception that I'm seeing today is, well, why do we need that? Why do I need him to help me buy a house? And why do I need him to help me sell my house?
And so I think the reason for that is most of the population really has no idea of what an agent does on either side.
Exactly.
And it's like that in anything. I'm not saying it's specific to real estate. You ask anybody what they do for a career, right?
Yep.
And they tell you X or Y. They really have no concept of what you do and what value you bring.
Very true.
And as an agent, that's going to be the trick, to show our value to a buyer or a seller to provide that.
Yep.
And I think the other side of the coin is, of course, the public perception is horrible. When it comes to agents, I mean, all they see is the TV shows and the same thing with flipping, right?
Oh,
same
100%.
thing with flipping.
And wholesaling. Oh my God,
Everybody
you can paint
makes
a big old target
right?
on me.
Everybody makes $1 billion,
Of
right?
course.
But what they fail to realize, again, looking at the data, if you look at the statistical information on how many homes the average agent sells, what they make.
Yep.
I can't recall off the top of my head, but I think like the average agent makes like $20,000 maybe a year.
Yep.
And
something like that.
So, the top 1% that's making all this money, it's no different than any other business where you have the high performers. In medicine, are you a general practitioner or are you a neurosurgeon, right?
Yep.
Who's making more money?
Yep.
Because you're specialized and you're better at your craft. So I don't know. I don't know where it'll go. It'll be interesting to see, but I'll keep doing this until it's not fun anymore. Right?
Absolutely. And I say all the time, I think that in any times of change, it's like the most important skills that you can have is communication. It's like,
course, yeah.
And that sales is communication. And if you can communicate, you're still going to be able to sell, right? Because people just need to be educated through the changes that are happening and everything.
Right.
So,
and adding your value. So,
of course.
I mean, we all have our own specific value. I think mine comes from my background, right? The family history of real estate. Yeah, we can get into all that, but construction background, and I walk into a house, I see things that the inspector may or may not see. I've got a much better feel, and I when I work with buyer clients, I mean the conversation, I'm very upfront about it. I tell them I'm not the guy, and I've heard agents say this. Oh, I only show my clients 4 houses. I am not that guy. I can tell you definitively I'm not that guy. I think it goes against the code of ethics. I have a duty to the buyer. I tell my clients, my buyer clients, I guarantee you I will talk you out of more houses than I'll ever try and talk you into. I'll never try and talk you into a house.
Yep.
Because I don't want somebody making a bad decision and then me being blamed for that bad decision.
Of course.
And I genuinely want to help people. That's my why, right?
And it's so funny that everybody I know that's successful has that same philosophy. I don't know if there's any sort of correlation there or anything, but
right,
maybe it's like, wow, you care first and have integrity and things work.
Yeah,
how about that?
For sure.
How about that? So on the other side of the equation, I can't tell you the number of agents that we have worked with in a wholesale capacity and they bring a buyer along, which going back to the other point about like commission always being negotiable, it's like we don't have to offer commission on any of our deals, right? But we always have because we want the damn thing to sell,
It's the bug light that attracts them.
Yeah, of course. Of course we're going to do that. But man, we just had one recently where the agent didn't even bring their buyer client through. They just gave them the lockbox and the house was vacant and we were okay with that anyway. So it was fine. But this agent, I think, was going to make like $8,000 or something on this particular deal. And after like a few weeks of going back and forth with title and getting everything cleared, it was a messier chain of title. But the agent made the comment to us, oh my God, I hate having to be this involved and tied into a deal. It's like, literally what you've done is send 7 emails back and forth.
So again, where's the value?
And how are, that's your perspective for your client?
Right. Where's the value? Again, the integrity issue of are you really doing your best for your client? You're going through the motions to get a paycheck.
Yep.
go get a job if you want to do that. This is not a job. What you and I do in our respective businesses is not a job.
That's right.
There's a lot to it that you have to pay attention to, for sure, to do the right thing.
That's right. That's right. All right, so let's go back to your entry into the world of real estate.
Wow. Okay. So again, family history, right? Great-grandfather was a builder. His one son owned a lumber yard right up the street here, well before Home Depot was ever a thing.
Okay.
His other son started a real estate brokerage in the 60s and then did traditional retail, transactions, and then got involved into, building apartment complexes and development deals and doing development deals with Wawa and Walgreens and Acme and involved in, larger scale commercial projects. So I grew up around this. My Ocean City history, I was lucky enough to be in a duplex on a lot that was owned by my great-grandfather. The house was lost in the 62 spring storm. It was washed away. This new house was built there in the 60s, and I grew up, spent most of my summers, on the bottom floor of this property. And my father's uncle, who owned the real estate brokerage, my father and he were very close in age. So they were more like brothers or, close cousins than uncle and nephew. But I had the good fortune to grow up around him. So I, just hearing what he was doing and seeing what he was doing, not always specific to the real estate business, but just, how his thought processes worked.
Yeah.
He was just a brilliant guy, and just, man, I really looked up to him, and he taught me so much just across the platform of life. And I just knew at a young age, I remember as a kid in high school, I always knew I belonged in real estate. Like, that's what I didn't know what that looked like, Drew, or how that was all going to pan out. But I always knew that was the case. So, you know how you get involved in life, right? Life happens, and you
sure does.
You drift with the tides, right? Yep. So, I go to college. Well, I went to college. I took a year off from college to find myself. I'm still looking, by the way. If you see me, let me know. So I moved back to Ocean City, New Jersey, year-round. I worked for a painting contractor down there, and surfed, and great life. And I realized, as I'm painting the spindles on a brand new construction, $1 million beachfront property at that time. This is back like 1989, I guess. Winds hawking off the ocean in like December, and I can't feel my fingers as I'm painting the spindles, on a 36-foot ladder full out or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I got to rethink some things here. So went back to college, thought I had a good plan. It was my delusion, I guess. I originally started in the School of Business and going in that direction. I'm not even going to say what my degree ended up in, because it's almost laughable, but life puts you in different places. But my goal coming out of college was to move down south, move to Florida, work for a beach resort.
Okay.
Figure out kind of the lay of the land. I've always been entrepreneurial, and then I was going to basically start a surf school or rent jet skis or do charters or something. I live the beach bum life, right?
Yeah.
The entrepreneurial beach bum life. Well, you know how things are in your head when you're younger, right? So I come out of college, working at a hardware store for the father of another guy who's an agent out in our direction. Knew this kid since we grew up, and great family, great people. Working at this hardware store, then trying to figure out things. And a friend of mine that I knew from Ocean City was working for an environmental company. He said they're looking for salespeople. Well, hell, I've never done sales in my life. I mean, if you know me and my personality, like, sales is not me, right? I'm not a sales guy. So they said they were looking for somebody, and the only other job offers I got were for less money and no benefits and nonsense. So anyway, long story short on that, I ended up taking a job for an environmental company in New Jersey. So I'm commuting to New Jersey every day. I've got, the white shirt, the tie, and the dress shoes, and the company car, and, selling environmental remediation services. And left that company, went to another company, was there for a while, started my own environmental company, had that for about, I don't know, five or more years. Had an issue with one of my partners, and just basically started selling the assets of the company off, and sold one of my drilling rigs to the company that I had previously worked for, and he was trying to get me to come back there, and man, I hated that business, Drew.
Yeah. What was the total length between the business that you owned plus work? You were in the environmental industry for how many years?
28 years total.
Okay.
28 years.
Okay.
So I came back part-time to this other company, and then wound up starting a division that was dealing, it was a monetary opportunity, right? I started a division that dealt primarily with residential insurance companies that dealt with leaking heating oil tanks, home heating oil tanks for residential properties. And this occurred usually during a property transaction, right? If the oil tank comes up as an issue in a property, there's testing that's done, or the tank is removed, they discover a problem. Now, where does it go from there? Well, there was insurance coverage in New Jersey to cover that in certain scenarios. So I had a division with 6 crews running every day doing remediation work for insurance companies. So that was soil and groundwater remediation related to underground storage tanks was the primary of that. But in the environmental business, I've done everything from mold, asbestos, rad decon at nuclear facilities.
Holy crap.
Superfund sites. You haven't lived until you've been at a federal Superfund site and you're digging up air reactive material. What happens with that is when you expose it to air, it catches on fire. So
that sounds awesome.
Yeah. So, you have to set up like spray heads all around it and containment and handle it in certain ways. I've done all kinds of crazy stuff that would refinery work and just really interesting stuff in that business. So that's
take a quick sidebar there. You mentioned for homeowners during a transaction when they're selling that they can have insurance to cover something like that.
So
I've never heard of that before.
Well, because they put in absolute pollution exclusions into policies over time. So when I was doing this work was very prevalent, and particularly in New Jersey because it had a unique situation with the DEP and the regulations that were required and how the geology of New Jersey is versus Pennsylvania. But the insurance companies got wise because here's the kicker, right?
It costs a lot of money, right?
Yeah,
so they don't want to pay out.
I've done residential heating oil tank remediations where I've structurally supported the houses, have suppressed groundwater, and dug underneath the houses for over $3 million. Over $3 million.
Well, we're going to have to pull up on screen. I know you sent me a photo one time of a house you basically had on stilts. It was dug so deep.
Helical pull-down micro piles, if you've ever used mini piles or micro piles or screw piles for structural integrity, if you have like a sinking foundation around here, you can use helical piers to stabilize those things. So we adapted them to hold the house up to dig underneath it, and then you have to suppress groundwater to get into the groundwater. And that one that I showed you, I think we were moving like 90,000 gallons of water a day out of that property, out of groundwater. Yeah, that one that I showed you, the insurance company already spent $1 million, and it took another $1.5 million to clean that one up.
Holy shit! So what if there's mostly insurance companies have exclusions now today?
Yeah.
What happens to somebody that's trying to sell their house? Say they bought it. Let's make up a hypothetical. They bought it 10 years ago, and now they're trying to sell it. And now an inspection uncovered that there's an underground tank and it's contaminated. And they're like, oh my God, this is going to cost me maybe $1 million. Like, what do they do?
So I know your audience is national. So to that extent, it's going to vary by state. Heating oil tanks don't exist in certain states where it's warmer. It really depends on the regulatory climate of the state DEP, what their rules are, and how they protect things, because they're really the driver, right? Residential heating oil tanks are not federally regulated. Gasoline tanks at your common service stations, there's federal regulation and state on that. But residential heating oil tanks are not regulated generally not regulated by the federal government. The state gets involved when they leak.
Got it.
So if you're in Pennsylvania, it's less of a concern, but it's still a concern. I mean, it can definitely cost you a lot of money to clean it up. So if you, speaking to your investor clients, or the investors that are listening to the podcast, or buyers in general, for the traditional retail buyers, if there's an underground heating oil tank at the property, you really need to get it inspected.
It's no joke.
It's no joke. It's no joke.
Yeah.
No.
Wow.
So.
Holy crap, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That definitely doesn't sound like a boring industry, Well,
we used to joke that it was a boring industry because we did a lot of drilling, so soil borings, so it was boring.
Touche. Yeah, all right.
It was
well
boring.
done.
It was boring from that standpoint.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. All right. So throughout all that time period, you weren't doing any agent work, any investing, nothing.
No, I was. So
where?
So in 2003, I got my real estate license, my PA real estate license, because again, I knew this was something that I always wanted to do. My youngest daughter came along a couple months early. In 2004, I had given notice to the environmental company that I was working with. I had built them from, like $2 million in revenue with non-steady cash flow to $6 million in revenue with steady cash flow and still growing. So they were trying to retain me. So I had my real estate license, intended to go into the family brokerage as a traditional agent. And daughter comes along. I wasn't sure whether there was going to be health issues or anything like that with her being premature. So I just took the safe fallback position and negotiated a crazy deal to stay at that environmental company I was with. Grew that to like $12 million a year in revenue and so on and so forth. But I still had this real estate itch.
Real estate investors, if you're looking for your next deal, you need to check out revamp365.ai. Whether you're looking for a deal to flip or to rent or even a deal to wholesale, we got you covered. You know what type of deals that you're looking for, so why are they always so hard to find? Well, to put it simply, traditional real estate marketplace platforms weren't built for you. They were built for homeowners. Revamp 365 was built by investors for investors. Build your buy box and instantly filter entire markets to find the precise properties that you're looking for. You can browse wholesale and MLS deals. You can run comps and access all data even if you're not a licensed agent. If you are a licensed agent, you're going to close more deals because you can set up buy boxes for all of your investor clients. You can upload and sell your off-market deals. And most importantly, you're going to set deal alerts so you never miss a deal that matches your buying criteria. Look, you know that missing one deal in the investment world can cost you tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. But you probably don't have 80 hours a week to invest in underwriting every single deal that comes on the market to be able to see if it's a fit for you. This is your solution. Go to revamp365.ai/podcast today for a special lifetime offer that we're only making available here. Normally, plans are $100 or more per month. And if you ask any of our members that have closed 1, 2, or multiple deals, they'll all tell you the platform paid for itself for 20 years with the first deal that they did. So for a limited time, you can go to that link at revamp365.ai/podcast to get a lifetime offer to access the software, saving you a boatload of money, and even better, giving you opportunity to find your next deal today. But don't wait, we won't keep this available forever. Go check it out, revamp365.ai/podcast.
So I bought my first investment property in 2004.
Okay.
I mean, look, I'm going to tell you the story that everybody tells you. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, right?
It is the common theme,
read
right?
Rich Dad Poor Dad. talking to a friend, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, already had the real estate license.
Yep. And like you said, you were genetically predisposed
Correct.
as well.
Yes.
How did it take you that long? Like there was never like the family trying to rope you in, like even before college, or
no, there wasn't because again there was enough distance there. Like if it was my father and mother that were in the business, it might have been different because you know how you follow those pathways. But because it was my father's uncle, you know, there was some
layer of separation, so to speak.
Yeah. Yep. So, you know, so that's why that never really went down that path.
Got it.
But it was always there. Always there. So I 2004, I bought my first couple of rental properties, investment properties in Collingdale.
Okay.
The intent was to buy the whole street because I had this vision of, you know, it was a dead end street and tear down both sides and build something with parking underneath it there, you know, more of an apartment complex thing was a long-term thought process. But they put, I don't know if you remember this or not, they at some point they decided that if you had a rental property, they put the sprinkler ordinance in where you were required to have hard pipe sprinkler system in a rental property if you bought it after a certain...
In Collingdale?
This was all over Delaware County.
What?
Yeah.
That doesn't exist today, dude.
No, it doesn't. And here's why.
Huh.
So DIG, Diversified Real Estate Investors Group, that I joined in 2004, there was a group of people. Walt Taggart from here might have actually been involved in that, but there was a group of guys that fought this. And what they found is that there was a violation of the process of how they put it in the building code. And here was the issue. It was very clear because it was redlining is basically what it was. It was the townships had maps of areas where Section 8 housing was starting to become more prevalent because it was at that time where everybody's buying everything. And, you know, the investment was going crazy. And so they wanted to stop it. So this is what they did to stop it. Because here's the thing. You needed a 1-inch line
coming into the house.
Coming into the house. Which means you had to dig up into the street, change the saddle on the main because I think the line's only a 3/4 line coming in for water. So you had to add another saddle to the main to supply that. So they were making it cost prohibitive.
Yep.
So yes, so a group of investors from DIG got together, fought this thing, and got it done. And by that point, I had moved on a little bit differently in my investing and didn't really want to buy more properties on that street. But ironically as it turns out, Wawa was looking at an area there that would have butted up to half of that street, so I could have sold those properties. Wawa decided they didn't want to buy there eventually, and I've sold those properties since anyway. But so bought rental properties. So then, you know, I don't know, 2007 through 2009, I was flipping houses and doing wholesaling.
I hear that was a good time.
Well, yeah, it was. Here's the thing, like everybody looks at that down market, right, and goes, oh my God, that's the worst time to be. No, it's the best time to be in real estate.
It's all a matter of perspective, right?
Well, here was the deal, right? There might be 30 properties in the same neighborhood to choose from, but you could get a good price. And here's what else I know. While there wasn't a ton of buyers out there, the qualified buyers, the pool was small. But if there's 30 houses for sale, and your house is fully rehabbed, new mechanical systems, you know, new roof, fresh, all ready to go, guess what house is selling?
Yep.
And you could sell them in 15 days.
Really?
Because they're buying those houses.
That makes sense.
So I was doing wholesaling and flipping at that time. So you know, wholesaling I was doing, wholesaling almost killed me, Drew.
Really?
Yeah, I'll leave that to you. You're the expert on the wholesaling. I was working for the environmental company in New Jersey, running the wholesaling business. And you know, I'm sure you remember when you started, you're just trying to figure all these things out, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember I made the mistake of dropping 3,000 pieces of direct mail all in the same day and not having the capacity to handle the calls that came in from this. So that was a learning experience to meter things out. But, you know, I was doing direct mail campaigns and I was doing parts of Delaware County, parts of Chester County, and parts of Lancaster County. So I'm running this triangle every day of over to New Jersey,
Trying to
wherever
get
I
over
need to
that
go for the job
appointment.
sites.
Yep.
Then on the way home, trying to, either hitting somebody in Chester County or Lancaster County primarily, and then coming back home from there and getting up the next day and doing that. And it's just, I did the wholesaling for 2.5 years, I guess, and that was enough for me.
Okay.
The goal there was really, I wasn't trying to create a wholesaling business as a business. I was just trying to cherry pick deals.
You were trying to buy deals.
I was trying to cherry pick deals
Yep.
and cover the marketing expenses and time. That's it.
Yep.
So,
And did that work though? Like you were still buying deals from your own lead gen source.
yeah, but I have this annoying propensity to be like BASF, right? I tell people I'm like BASF from the standpoint of I don't make the cooler, I make it colder, right?
I don't know what BASF is.
So BASF, you don't remember? I forget how old I am. BASF is a chemical company that was involved in a lot of things, but their technologies they weren't necessarily the innovator of something. Like they didn't create it.
Got it.
But they took an idea and then they innovated the idea. So they weren't like the
pioneer.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's so I look at businesses and I do have an ability to see things at a higher elevation. I'm you realize things about yourself over the years. I'm very good at strategic decision making. I'm bad at tactical.
Okay.
I can plan the D-Day invasion, but I can't run the ground operations.
Okay.
So I looked at the wholesaling business and I'm like, okay, let's build this. Like, how do I scale it, right? So I'm starting to do all this stuff. So basically, here's the thing. I started investing some time and money into it, but couldn't invest the right amount of the proper amount of time to make it into something. And it just became this snowball from hell that was it was killing me. If I kept doing it, it would have killed me. It was too much. It was too much. And I said, we just got to cut it.
Yep.
So I had
understand.
a partner in that business at the time. So just cut that business.
Got it. But so were you assigning any deals to anyone else?
yeah.
Or
Oh, yeah.
all the ones? Yeah, you were?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And you still were buying some of them for yourself to flip and to rent or?
Yeah, buy and hold.
Okay.
Buy and hold. Yep.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, again, you're just looking at what's the opportunity in this property, what makes sense, what's the highest and best use for this property.
Yep.
Do I want this, the primary question, do I want this one? No, okay, immediately wholesale it off to somebody else because it may not be in your area, it may be bound up with other projects or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
Or, I want this one. Does it make more sense to flip this or does it make more sense just to put X amount in and keep it?
Yep.
So that's what I was doing.
I get it.
Yeah.
So you were primarily doing direct mail?
Yep.
Okay. I love direct mail.
Well,
I'm a direct mail guy.
You have some experience there.
Yeah, but like we were talking earlier, there's a certain level of insanity that you have to have in order to keep on with it. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
So I've got to ask you about that. Like, what was the? There's a lot of learning that came from the beginning of doing the wholesaling for me, and I went in with this idea of I made the mistakes of the big giant postcard with the house where it's underwater or the chains around it, and then you start learning things and you go, wow, this thing that I thought was complete crap, and I got a good story about that I'll share with you too. Like, this outperforms any other piece that I'm putting out there. So, like, what was your experience with that? Did you go through that same thing?
All the time, and I still do, all the time.
Because something works for a while and it stops, right?
Something works for a while
stale.
and it stops. But there's been things that I'm like, dude, this is the best thing since sliced bread. This is going to break records across the board. And then it's like crickets,
Yeah.
It's like one of the earlier campaigns that I did, it was like a postcard campaign. I guess we're going back 5-6 years ago. And I don't even remember the mail piece at this point, but I remember that I was like, this is going to be the best thing ever. And I think we dropped like 10,000 of them or something. And actually I had another story. We got like 2 phone calls. Like it was the worst performing mail piece.
Okay. Yep.
I did another one. That was a smaller batch, but again, one of my first probably. It may have been a couple thousand pieces. Had the wrong fucking phone number on it. Oh, yeah, man.
Wow.
So made a lot of mistakes. I've had the mistake where a mail merged file that we were trying to send over to the mail house, the people's address and their name, they got like misaligned in the Excel file before we sent it. So you own 123 Main Street, and I'm trying to mail you and say, hey, Greg, I want to buy 123 Main Street. But instead, you know, it had another address that you didn't own. So actually, it was kind of an interesting case study because we got a lot of responses from people pissed off. Like, I don't own that.
But did that
it's
work
a response.
Did that work to your advantage?
It kind of didn't, but I was too new at that point to even capitalize on it.
I used to get your mail pieces. All the time. That's one thing that I still do to this day. I always keep those mail pieces.
I keep all of them. I get them.
I got a whole folder at home.
I keep them from all industries, not just, you know, Anderson Windows. They have some great direct mail pieces. Yeah. Oh, man, I save them all.
Yeah. What's working, and can you test this? And just playing that.
But that's the interesting thing is like sometimes even as I gained more knowledge and had successes and failures and learned from them, there's been times where it's like I tried something else with more knowledge that I'm like, this is going to be great. And it's not, you know? So that's kind of the thing with marketing is it's a fancy word for testing.
Testing, yes. Yeah. It's an expensive word for testing.
A very expensive word. Yep.
It's amazing how much that the wholesaling industry has changed. Like when I first got involved in real estate, it was the national speakers hitting all of the investment groups, and I belonged to DIG here locally in South Jersey Real Estate Investors Group. I was a board member at South Jersey Real Estate Investors for a while. I was a subgroup leader for the Chester County subgroup for DIG. It's actually where I met Steve.
Okay.
And Bill Kratz. Do you know Bill Kratz?
I do.
Yeah. So Bill, I met both of them used to come to the subgroup.
Okay.
So that's where I met those two guys. But how fast the technology has changed. Like, so you had these gurus that came to these events, right? And they would sell you a package or a boot camp or whatever. And I spent a bunch of money traveling and going to things and learning real estate that, you know, the investment side that way. And there's always somebody that was good in different areas, you know. But now I see the national gurus are all pushing wholesaling. Like that's the push. And with that, with the technology, right, going from flipping classes to wholesaling classes, I mean, it's crazy what's available now, the information you can get and how quickly you can do things, and hiring VAs to help you with that. I mean, hell, when I was doing this, it was direct mail was the way. There was
the only way.
There was no text service or you know. I mean, okay, I'm not. It was beyond where we had dial-up internet, right? I mean, it was like real internet, right? But
we had carrier pigeons.
Yeah, carrier pigeons. So I mean, it was, but direct mail was the way to go, and the one piece that I used to send that outperformed everything every single time was a 6-inch by 9-inch yellow postcard with an old typewriter font on it. I don't think if I sent something out now with an old typewriter font on it, that anybody would respond to it because we're so far past that.
That's true.
I don't know. I'm so
Might
far
be a
removed
good
from
test.
I'll
run it for you. You fund it.
Love it. Post-it notes I loved.
Post-it notes.
Did a lot of that too.
Yep.
But that was cool. That was trying to find the right people that wouldn't throw this pack of Post-it notes in the trash. So you always had to check, you know, if you give them the map and say, we're going here today, guys, you always had to check trash cans to see if they were throwing them out.
Yep.
But yeah, that was cool doing that. But I mean, the technology today and how you can be an out of area wholesaler.
You can. That's the thing with the technology. It's a blessing and a curse, right? Because it's easy to look at some brand new thing that comes out and it's like, wow, I can leverage the crap out of this.
Shiny
AI, you know, I can replace different administrative tasks and jobs and automate things. But at the end of the day, that means everybody else now has access to that technology too. You're not the only one that knows about it.
It's not,
And at what point does that start changing the industry entirely, right? To your point, so many gurus like just hawking, you should wholesale because it looks shiny and sexy. And it's like, you can do this very easily with no money and there's no risk. And, you know, you don't need licensing, which we'll get into.
We have to talk about that wholesaling thing because I
absolutely
knowing your history of where you came from and knowing the construction side, that wholesaling, when people told me, and this is before, you know, we're in the technology phase we're in now, people said they wanted to get involved in wholesaling. I always advise them not to do that. And the reason I advise them not to do that is because it's the lowest barrier to entry into the real estate investment world, but it requires the highest degree of skill.
Yep.
You have to know how to market. You need to know how to value properties. You need to know how to do construction estimating. You need to know basic orders of construction and things like there's all these things that you need to know that you don't need to know if you're just flipping or if you're just buying and holding.
Yep.
And I see a lot of people get in, you know, that got involved in wholesaling and failed. And I think it used to be the joke. It's like, you know, and you still see it, right? I mean, I still am on the list, right? If there's a wholesale, I'm always looking, right?
Yep.
So if there's a wholesale deal, I want to know.
Yep.
But I get these supposed deals.
Yep.
And it's the barriers to entry are so low into wholesaling were so low, and the people didn't have that knowledge. They thought a deal was whatever dumb number they came up with that the person said yes to, whether the deal made any sense.
I got
or
a
not.
contract.
Yeah,
I got
correct.
a contract.
Correct,
It's like,
yeah.
but you're not going to ever close it. So
how important is that to know the construction side, right? I mean, that's
very important. And that's the thing. Like, I started wholesaling the backwards way of what most people do. You know, most people, that is, to your point, their entry into the world of real estate investing. I started as a fix and flip and a landlord guy, right? And some of my entry into the world of wholesaling was being naive and being like, dude, what I do is so much harder. Like at that point, that kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me was we bought a deal in Philly from a wholesaler that was under contract with another wholesaler. So it was like guy number one made $40,000. Guy number two made $80,000.
So
and then the seller got whatever.
Yeah.
And the deal was still a good deal for me. So I didn't bitch or complain. It's like, hey, you guys made your money. But it was impossible to look at that and be like, man, I'm about to do this giant rehab
put all
and
your money
I'm
at
going to
risk.
net less money than these guys that did nothing did, right? And now I can say with years of experience and hundreds of deals under my belt, it's certainly not nothing.
They
right?
earned every penny of it, didn't they?
Yeah. But it's so easy to look at that surface level, just like going back to what we were talking about, public perception of agents.
Sure.
Oh, well, all he did was, show us a couple houses and he got a check for, 3% of the wholesale price. It's like, no, there's a lot more that happened behind the scenes. It's just, that's all that you saw, So whatever. But back to you. So this time period, you start wholesaling, you're flipping some houses, and then what happens after that?
Well, I mean, my whole time on the investment side of real estate, I would ebb and flow with that, right? Like and I'm an education junkie. I can't help myself, right? And it's not that I'm not an implementer too. It's just that I would get some education and some knowledge, and I'd go do some stuff, and I'd master that, and then I'd be like, okay, now what's next, or where do I take this, or what's the next level, or whatever. So then I'd go back and get more education, and go do the next thing. But it was like this ebb and flow. I'd sit on the curb for a while, and I'd be hot and heavy into one thing, and I just kind of pull back for a while, and with market changes and all that, and so where did it go from there? I don't know, man. I love construction. I love it because at the end of the day, when somebody says, well, what'd you do today? You go, that wasn't here this morning. That. Right? It's not like, oh, I moved this giant pile of paper from here to here and I have really nothing to show for it.
Yep.
But 10 cups of coffee to keep me awake doing it. So I always love construction. It's just the creativity of it and physicality of it, and it beats you up too. I owned for a short period of time when I was selling my environmental company and figuring out what my next move was. I did have a small building and construction company, but it was never a long-term thing for me because I knew I had to make money with my head, not my back. And I also know I'm horrible at managing people. I'm really good at managing processes, horrible at managing people because I'm a logical, rational guy. I'm not an emotional guy. So like when people start with their emotional shit, I shut down. I just shut down. Like, yeah, okay, you deal with that over there. That's fine. I got a nation to build here, right?
Yeah.
Keep moving. So I don't know. I mean, I got into private lending.
Okay.
Kind of where I'm moving more now is into the private placements, like I said, and it just I would still do flips, but the struggle that I have now, and Stan Wilder will beat me up for this one. Stan's a friend of mine as well, because he's finding deals. I'm not diligently looking for deals. I'm waiting for a deal to float by me that makes sense. And the stuff that I see that does float by me, it's not. I'm at a different point in my life, and I'm used to some of the numbers we used to get.
Dude, I say it all the time. It's
Profits
like,
it's thinning.
I have sticker shock, and it's like I'm looking at this stuff all day, every day. That's all that we do is look at deals, analyze deals, and sell deals, right? Yep. And still, using Collingdale as an example, it's like we'll have a seller that's like, oh yeah, I'm looking for $175,000 for this, 3-bed row home, and I'm like, absolutely not, no way, right? And then Josh or somebody will say something to me. It's like, Drew, you got to look at the comps, and I do, and I'm like, oh my. Dude, this actually is this doesn't make any sense,
it's that perception
right?
That perception of where you were.
Especially because so much changed so quickly over the last 3-4 years. It's like, no question, that same house, okay, it may be a decent cash deal at 175 today, but literally 3 or 4 years ago, that was maybe a 75 or 85K cash purchase. You know what I mean? It's like, it changed really rapidly.
So that's where I struggle.
Even though you're looking at it all the time, it's like, there's no way that can be a deal. You never take the time to even look at it because at a surface level, you're like, can't be. Can't be.
You look at it from the risk standpoint too. Again, being older now, like I'm not as willing to take as much risk with the money.
Sure.
And because we're talking about a bigger chunk of money and being less risk adverse now since I'm older and I'm going to need money for retirement at some point. I definitely look at things differently, and and then also you have a lot of people that came into the investment business from the, I think HGTV ruined the flipping business, to be honest with you. It's just, because the expectation was set too high and everybody thought they were going to make $1 billion by, putting duct tape and caulk on stuff.
Yep.
And I don't have that propensity to not do something correctly if I have the opportunity. Yeah. I'm not into hiding stuff and all that. So I don't know. I would love to do some more flips just to get my construction fixed, but I'm not actively out there searching for them. But I should use your software.
You should. I insert commercial.
You're right. I do go on it, Drew. I got to tell you, man, that is amazing. What you've developed is amazing.
Thank you.
I mean, and I know you had the conversation with Stan about it and all that and how well it's worked out for him. But yeah, man, I can't wait to see what you do.
We're just
with
scratching
that
the surface.
I know.
Just scratching the surface.
Like that's the kind of stuff I get excited about, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody that's creating a disruptive technology, basically.
Yep.
But
and it was out of necessity, right? It's like, this is something that I was doing years ago.
How do I fix
how can we make it better?
Right.
Yep.
So I need to invest some time there. Maybe picking up a flip. I should probably just do 1 or 2 in my self-directed IRA. Be the smart thing.
Absolutely. If you're to just spit out what is your ideal deal scenario for a flip today? What are you looking for? Are you looking for something that is a more cosmetic light rehab, or full gut renovation, or is it more so the profitability of it? Or
The profitability. Because I'm not, I mean, hell, you're in construction and have been involved in it, and I've dug up stuff that catches on fire, for God's sake. So it's not like a lot that I'm afraid of, right?
You're not too scared of it.
Not super worried about that. And like a foundation repair, everything's fixable, right? I mean, everything's fixable. And if you can look at it and say, well, how can I fix this and build a temporary wall to support it, take the wall out, blah, blah, blah. It's like you work the process in your head, right? So the structural stuff doesn't necessarily bother me. So it's really more about the profitability. I don't care how much the property does need or doesn't need, but how much money am I putting at risk, for how long, and what can I get out of it?
Gotcha.
That's really it.
Quick sidebar that I just thought of there. Have you ever actually targeted and tried to search for properties that have foundation issues or weird things like that? Because that's a special niche that a lot of people run the hell away from, and that can mean opportunity. It's like, I'm not afraid of it, and I have the skills, knowledge, and resources to be able to tackle it.
So along those lines, with past history, there was a time that I was starting to design a concept, and I'll tell you why it didn't work in a second, but I was looking for properties with leaking oil tanks. I can fix that.
Yep.
Right? But I was looking for specific things. And I actually wrote a whole article about it for Mark Halpern's newsletter when he was doing another thing with his real estate ventures. But basically, I was looking for a property that was an estate that had a leaking oil tank. They're trying to sell the property and get out of this. They're trying to get out of the DEP, from underneath the DEP's mess. If you write the contract basically to say that all proceeds from the insurance carrier go to you,
right?
There's my money to fix this. And knowing what I know and how the coverage is, and depending on the carriers, because I knew what carriers would cover what and who wouldn't, just like in the disaster recovery business, the fire, smoke, water, mold damage business, what carriers will cover this, but not this.
Sure.
Or, so all the layering, right? So
conceptually sounds great.
There was opportunity there, because I know, like, if I got to dig up the sidewalk and tear out the shrubs to get to this, then in the rehab, if I was going to do landscaping and this stuff anyway, I can make actual improvements to the property that are now covered by this. So the issue with it was that specific scenario was few and far between. The regulations were changing at that point in time from the carrier standpoint as far as what they would cover.
The insurance, okay.
So there was a big shift in that, and I knew we were going to time out at a certain period, which it pretty much has. There's ways to work around it, but it's pretty much timed out. You got into scenarios where you had to do forensic analysis to age date how long that tank was leaking to see where in that coverage policy periods, like where it fell. And then
holy crap.
Basically that would say, okay, we'll cover 60% of the loss or 40% of the loss, and you're responsible for the remainder, rather than 100%. I mean, because that was the goal, Drew. Here, with that whole heating oil tank thing, why it was so successful, when it was successful, is when you look at insurance policies. Suppose they have it's $100,000 per occurrence on an annual basis, right? Is the loss. Okay. Well, if you have an above ground oil tank and the seam burst and you drop 275 gallons of oil, that's a catastrophic loss. $100,000 coverage limit, cap, boom, right? Heating oil tank's a different deal. Heating oil tank leaks slowly over years. So if it's $100,000, per occurrence on an annual basis, and you can show that it leaked for at least 10 years, there's $1 million.
Really?
Right? So that was the kicker. So once they started saying, once they put the absolute pollution exclusions in place, then they were saying, okay, this is where we stopped in this year. So every year past that, there is no coverage. So now when you age date that, you have to get back into those policy periods to grab any insurance. And then there was a cost segregation as far as, what percentage they would pay. So by the time I conceptually came up with this idea to go target these residential heating oil tanks, that was happening. So that was going away. The issue with trying to find the property where you had, an estate or a property where somebody was trying to get out or sell and they were willing to give that up to get out from underneath it was,
very niche.
Very, very niche. And then there was the conflict of interest issue too. Because if I'm working with some of these carriers, for me to do that was, the company I was with and me personally, as a result of being paid for performance of what I created, we were all making a bunch of money doing it.
Sure. Yep.
And I didn't want to put that at risk either.
Gotcha.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep.
So it's something that you've thought about before, but maybe I gave you a new idea with looking for foundation stuff now?
Yeah.
You don't want to do that big of a rehab, but there could be more opportunity there.
I don't want to do anything anymore.
Well, fair.
I just want to hang at the beach and surf.
Fair.
So, that's in your perfect life, right? I don't know. So,
okay.
I like the odd things because again, the way my brain works, I like to solve problems, like creative problems and think. We talked about earlier. I don't think outside the box; it's too limiting. I like to think outside the irregular polygon.
Yep.
So, find me a problem. Environmentally tainted properties. I think there's opportunity there on the commercial side. The problem is you have to have the capital to fund all of it because you're not getting a loan on those properties.
Very cash heavy, right?
We talked about one.
We did
before.
We
right?
did. I really wanted to buy that deal.
Former gas station. Right?
Yeah. You talked me out of that one. I thought I had a steal of a deal.
So we're consistent here, right? I told you in the beginning I talk people out of more properties than I do into them.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did, honestly, because I just looked at it and I was like, okay, I can buy this thing for, I think it was $30,000 or $40,000.
Yeah.
And there were comparable size-wise commercial properties nearby that were selling for $600,000-$700,000. I'm like, this is a smoking deal, man. Come on, you're telling me even if I spent $50,000 in my mind, I'm like, there's no way we would spend more than that, right?
And I just told you I spent up to $3 million on a residential, not commercial. Gasoline's a whole different deal.
Yeah. Yep. So I ran away.
Yeah,
I ran away.
But is that property still sitting? Do you know, or
still sitting?
Yeah,
still sitting. Yep. I don't think anybody wants to touch it.
Did it go through the iterations of being a gas station?
Here's the thing. It wasn't a gas station. It was always just a mechanic shop. So there were no, to our knowledge, we didn't have a phase one. We didn't have anything
waste
done.
oils, though, lifts. Right?
We think the only thing that they had on the whatever report from the DEP or whatever, there were buried tires or something. But there was something
wasn't
like
there an old fueling island out front or something like that. I'm trying to remember the pictures on that one.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
we'll have to pull that back up.
Yeah.
Maybe
revisit that one, right?
Yeah. Revisit it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like through all that, you have started as an agent serving buyer and seller clients as well, right?
Well, the market's right for it too. So, I'm passionate about the investing side too. If the market flipped, you talked about that in the beginning. Do I think it's going to go that way? Well, if it ever did, that's the beauty of being an investor agent, right? I'll work whatever side's easier to work. If the opportunity is on one side or the other, I'm not an up market or a down market. I'm not going to be the agent that goes and plays cards in the back room like they did the last time because there's no buyers or sellers.
Yep.
So I'll figure it out. I'm not worried about that.
I love that. That's been my philosophy for the past 2 years, ever since, COVID happened and, oh my God, is the world going to fall apart?
Sure.
Is like, I don't really care. With the wholesale company specifically, it's like, it doesn't really matter whether we're in an up market, down market, left, right, sideways, doesn't matter, right? Yeah. It's like the entire dynamic of the business may change, our marketing and messaging may change, and a seller profile may change, and a buyer profile may change.
Right.
But there's always going to be people that need to sell at a discount greater than what the market rate is. Yep. And there's always going to be people that are looking for a deal, whether it's to park money because they're trying to escape inflation and other things or hedge against whatever. There's always going to be buyers, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All the other dynamics may change, but there's always going to be deals and there's always going to be buyers.
Absolutely.
Just got to be able to adapt to it.
Right. Find the opportunity in whatever exists.
Yep.
Right. You can't get trapped in it.
Yep.
That's I used to follow politics and I wound up just being angry about things that I could never change. And so my philosophy on politics today is I can't change who's in power or what the rules are. But what I sure as heck can do is figure out what the rules of the current game are.
Yep.
Whoever that happens to be, however that pans out. And honestly, I don't even care how it pans out.
Yep.
Because my goal is to make sure my family is provided for. So I need to figure out the rules of whatever games at play and use those rules to my advantage to create my own economy, to make sure my family's fed and clothed and housed and has medication. You know, I mean, that's so absent of, you know, all out warfare, whatever the situation is. And I think maybe that's the lesson for people, right? Is you can't worry about all this stuff. And I'm not saying it's not okay to take stances or have beliefs about things or whatever, but at the end of the day, you always have to just deal with what is. And I think that's from an entrepreneurial mindset. You're always trying to come up with a plan for your business based on this is what I think might happen. And that there's value to that, right? But if plan A doesn't work out, be dynamic. There's 25 more letters in the alphabet, right?
That's right.
Go with plan B, C, D, all the way through Z. And if you use Excel, it's, you know, double A and everything. Just keep going,
It can
right?
keep on going.
Right. So that's the key. You know, I mean,
That's a golden insight, man.
do the right thing. Always try and do the right thing for other people. You know, that's kind of my personal role, right? I don't care what people's perception is of me, provided that I'm being ethical, moral, and not causing intentional harm
Yeah.
to somebody, right?
Yep.
Be a decent person. Try and genuinely help people. I don't know. I mean, that's one of my core values is about legacy, and it's probably my primary driver. And legacy to me is not. It's not owning a bunch of buildings or having $1 billion in the bank. It's, you know, sucks being the richest guy in the cemetery too. So, you know, there's that part of it. It's about being that pebble that starts to ripple in somebody else's pond. It's the right words to the right person at the right time can make a huge difference in their life. And just to try and, you know, be a builder and a farmer, right? Build and grow people.
I love that.
I don't care if somebody remembers who I am. Like, that's not important to me. What's important to me and the monument for me is, did I make a difference, right? So, so again, being that pebble in somebody else's pond, it starts that ripple, but that ripple can't just be a short one. For me, the meaning in it is, have I made a meaningful difference in that person's life that they can now magnify and makes a difference in future generations to come, right? I don't have to be known by anybody. Just do something that makes a difference.
That's powerful.
That's my driver.
That's super powerful. Yeah. But I think the Achilles heel of that is, how do you know? How do you feel?
So I don't know. So that's a great question, right? And here's what I found. There's a long list of people that I know specifically I've been that pebble for. And it's not, you know, I don't know, Drew, it's a gift for me, right? It's an ability to see something in somebody that they can't see them in themselves. That's my gift. When I meet certain people, there's certain people I'm like, this person's going to do something of value in their life or go somewhere. You know what I mean? And then
I do.
And then that gives me energy, and I'll feed that when I have the opportunity.
I love that.
You know, on the flip side of that, if I see somebody that wants to just complain about their situation and not take any action to try and improve their situation, man, I check out really quick.
Yeah.
But that other side is that's my energy, right? That definitely gives that's like what do you call it?
It fuels you.
It does, and at a exponential level. That's what the term I'm looking for. There is exponentiality to that.
I love that. I love that. So basically you're saying you have seen it. You've seen the results of
100%.
I love that, man.
100%.
That's really cool.
There's people that are in places, in businesses and other things in their life that I've had conversations with to grow them over time, and it was simply a matter of them not having the self-confidence or the ability to see things in themselves that I could clearly see that were differentiators.
I remember we had the conversation before, and you said something along the lines to me that you historically are able to give the greatest insights and wisdom and advice to other people, but it's more challenging to give that same advice to yourself.
Yeah, and again, over years, I mean, I've part of my personality is to dive into education. We talked about my thirst for knowledge and learning and growing that way all the time, and so as part of that, I mean, I've studied myself for,
which is super deep, man. A lot of people are afraid to even do that or never have the desire to in the first place. But
I want to I'm sitting inside this little human suit trying to steer this baby every day, right? and I know I'm different. And if I look at my personality profile going through a number of different paid and free things that I've done for years, and it's always been consistent, Drew. It's always been consistent. And my personality type's about 2% of the population. So of course I'm going to feel like I'm different than everybody else, right? Because I am.
Yeah.
I am. And it took me a long time to come to terms with that. But now I see, I know where I'm good, I know where I'm not good, and
that's huge.
Play to those strengths, right? And I use those strengths, and in those strengths are that ability to see things in other people and to help somebody in a genuine way. It doesn't work on me because the way my brain works.
Yeah.
You know, but I've always see the connectivity and patterns and the 50,000 foot elevation of what's going on. You know, I'm definitely see that but I mean, there's struggles with that to communicate with certain types of people. I had somebody that worked for me that, you know, I was, you know, 50,000 foot down looking down on the forest, and this person was from the tree looking up.
Yeah.
And I, so again, in my learning, right, I did some research on figuring this person out, and I figure out how to communicate with that person effectively. But, you know, just, I don't know, just, I'm definitely a student of myself. And it sounds odd to say, but I mean, to try and figure out what's your underlying operating system and where are you good and where are you not good, and not go contrary to that. Because I spent years trying to, I mean, we talked about going into environmental as a salesperson. I'm not a salesperson. In real estate, I'm not a salesperson.
Yep.
Where's my value? My value is being not emotionally connected to something or getting emotional about it, being able to be a rational decision maker, see things that other people can't, using my past knowledge and skills, and genuinely guide somebody to the best possible situation for them.
That's right. That's right.
So,
which is a whole nother deep rabbit hole that to me, that is the best form of sales that could ever exist.
Because it's
like
genuine.
I look at myself now as a salesperson, and I've trained sales teams and everything.
Yep.
But if I looked like 10 years ago at what I thought then was my traditional definition of a salesperson, it's like, for one, that's definitely not me. For two, that's slimy and sleazy and I don't like it. But now that it's like I've evolved, I've learned a lot more. It's like, no, the best form of selling in anything, real estate or any other industry, is exactly what you just described.
Yeah.
Caring, being knowledgeable about whatever the topic is, not being a piece of shit and trying to sway somebody one way or the other, right? And just educating through the entire process. And when that person does end up turning into a closed transaction, it's like, it's the greatest thing in the world.
Sure.
I got paid for doing what I love and helping somebody
and they're happy with you. They don't feel like they got pushed into something. They're genuinely happy with you, and the trust has been built there.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're changing the perspective
The
of
dynamic.
salespeople, man.
I love it.
We're
Yeah,
changing
yeah.
it little by little.
Yep.
I doubt it, but we're doing our part. We're doing our part. So what's next for you? What are you excited about? What's coming
Wow.
down the pipe?
I'm spending some time working on myself right now. Just with the understanding that I have of myself, to try and reignite my fire. Like,
Okay.
and some of that's with age, right? I mean, you young guys, you don't know this stuff. But you as you get older, things start to change. You have the layering of the weight of things that have occurred. Yeah, and you have the chemical changes that occur, where, I mean, I'm more, I mean, I'm not super old, Drew. I'm less than 84. But I am tired, right? I am tired. And so I look at, my God, I'll tell you that the thing that's most important to me now is time. Time. You can waste time, you can invest it, or you can spend it, right?
Yeah.
It's another piece of gold from my friend Mark Halpern and a book that he wrote that actually he figured out a way to track happiness based on time. It's a cool book. Has an app for it too, so he actually tracks his time. I'll send it to you.
Interesting.
But time is a big thing for me. It's like, I think of so many times in my younger years where I said, I'll do that later, or and so really what's coming to mind for me is like my coastal time is sacred to me. I feel most at peace, at most connected and whole when I'm at the beach and when I'm in the water particularly.
Okay.
And being older, I want to make sure that I'm physically able to keep doing the water activities that I do, and been surfing for 50 years of my life,
that.
right? And going to keep doing it till I die. But that's my zen, right? So there was, if I look back over the years there was so much push to build. And that gets back to, heading towards the richest guy in the cemetery. I could have done a lot of things better in life. I mean, we can all say the same thing, but where before, if there was hurricane swell coming in, I may not have gone, because I'm like, I got to do this now. Now I'm trying to figure out the way to shuffle things around look, I'm not chasing
out there.
12-foot waves and crap like I used to when I was a kid. But just to get out there and be present and do that is kind of what I'm focusing on. Time right now. And I don't know how to balance that. I mean, it's something that I struggle with. I mean, as a retail agent, you're kind of 24/7.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not bad. I'm trying to build that business too. So, I'm stuck in some of my own old traps of building the business and trying to account for time. I just have this hyper awareness of time at this point in my life.
That makes sense.
So you don't know how much you have left.
Very true.
The check that you're right to regret gets bigger every day, right? So you got to be careful that it's not too big.
Yeah. So with that current deep level of feeling that you have for time and your awareness of how you're spending it and how you feel, if you were to go back 20 years into the past, knowing what you know now and what you feel now, would you do things differently? Would you?
Great question. Probably, because hindsight's always 20/20. I would have left the environmental business a lot sooner. I knew I belonged in real estate, and I should have started the traditional side of it much sooner than I did. I was getting my real estate fix by doing the investing stuff, and being involved in that world, and that definitely filled a void for me, and that was all good. I don't know. I mean, it's tough to say, Drew. I mean,
Of course it is.
because look, I did well in the environmental business, and it allowed me to do a lot of things. I had the cash to buy rental properties and
That's
start
a blessing.
The wholesaling.
That in itself is a
there's,
blessing.
There's a lot of
man.
value.
Yep.
The flip side of that is, I was leaving my house at, by 6 o'clock every morning, and not getting home till late at night because I was going to different meetings and stuff like that. So, could I have done better and invested more time with my family? 100%. But I also know that, how I'm wired. You asked what would I do differently, or I don't know. I don't know if I'm capable of doing anything differently. I might just be who I am, and I've always been very focused on business and trying to build and grow things. And I don't ever see myself retiring in the traditional sense. But there again, how many realtor retirement parties have you ever been to? Right? Have you ever heard of one? No, they just keep going until they die, right? They sell less houses. They just sell a couple houses each year, and they just die. I could never retire. I could never just sit and do something. I'm incapable of it. And this is going to sound ironic. I can't sit on the beach. Like, I can't sit on the beach all day. Like, I hate that. It's not in my DNA. I have to be doing some type of activity.
Yep.
I feel if I'm sitting down somewhere for too long and not doing anything, I feel like I'm just waiting to die. I'm like my thought process is there's things I need to be doing that can help me and others.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I share that same sentiment with you, man.
not
It's
able to
like,
sit still.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
I mean, do you see yourself retiring?
No.
You'll always be doing something, right?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Yep. It's not a desire of mine. And, I know people that had a lot of success like in their 20s and they're like, oh, it's my goal to be able to retire like by my mid 30s. And I'm like, man, I'm in my mid 30s. I am doing what I want to do right now, man. It's
So
like
now
I
we're back
want to
to
be
the
building.
time thing, right? I mean, to be in full control of your time is a different story. I'm not in full control of my time. So
Let's talk about that, because so many people, to your point about the irony of everybody that starts investing in real estate, I've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and now I want to invest, right? That's absolutely 99% of people have that same story, myself included. And another commonality between almost everyone that starts investing in real estate in some capacity is, I want to have time freedom. What the fuck is time freedom?
So I think it's a misnomer. Time flexibility, I think, is different than time freedom.
But that's not what anybody says.
No, because that's not as catchy of a word.
Yeah, it's not as sexy.
Right, exactly. But that's
time freedom doesn't exist, man.
not unless you are a trust fund baby that's independently wealthy, that truly doesn't have to do anything or make any decisions.
Right.
That's the only scenario I see that being a full reality. Time flexibility is a different story.
For sure.
The other one that makes me nuts with real estate investment is passive income.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm gonna get fired up, dude.
So as somebody that owns rental properties, would you consider that passive income?
Not even a little bit. No, maybe a little bit.
Semi-passive.
Maybe a little bit. Yes.
Semi-passive would be what I would describe that as.
Yes. Yes.
But now that's,
my God.
And that's not time freedom either. That's time flexibility.
Of course.
Because you're not dealing with an issue with a property from 9 to 5 every day for 5 days a week. It's, you don't hear anything, everything's great, money's coming in, and then all of a sudden, place catches on fire. The heater motor goes on, Christmas Eve when you're with your family. Ask me how I know that one.
Oh, I know all too well. Like the only issues that I had with my rental properties in the first few years of owning them only happened when we were on vacation,
Right.
Christmas Eve.
Right.
Yep. All at the worst possible time. So yep.
So I would have invested more in commercial property, I think, rather than residential, knowing what I know now.
Okay.
Because you're the majority of your problems with commercial property are 9 to 5, Monday through Friday,
Very good point.
not 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. all days of the week and
right.
weekends and holidays.
That's right. That's
Right.
right. So specifically, if you did that, if you went back, what would that commercial asset class look like that you would want to invest in?
So when I owned my own environmental company, I was never in love with the environmental business. My true learning about the environmental business is the only real green in that business, and we can get started on green technology if you have another 17 hours someday, and I'll give you my true thoughts on that. The only green that anybody truly cares about in the environmental business is the paper kind with pictures of, deceased presidents and noble statesmen printed on it. It's no different than anything else, right? The decision tree always follows the money. And throughout history, human history, it's always been that way with everything. It's no different than anything else. It's just the bullshit spin that everybody has on it. And I've actually had conversations with people that I hired into the environmental business saying, if you're an environmentalist, you think you're coming in here as an environmentalist, I just want you to understand this may not be for you, because that is not the business we're in. We're environmental consultants and environmental remediation specialists. And that's very different. And when I look at the calculations, the heating oil tank. So maybe the tank lost, 150 gallons over X number of years. Well, when you're talking about cleanup criteria in parts per million or parts per billion, let's go with parts per billion in groundwater, right? Take one red golf ball, put it somewhere in this entire room, fill the rest of the room up with white golf balls. All you need to do is find the one red one and you're over the standard, right?
Okay.
So it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much, is my point there. But now I look at, okay, so 150 gallons of fuel oil got spilled. You're on public water, you're on public sewer. There's no vapor intrusion hazard into the house. There's no immediate danger to life and health as far as, water sources or anything like that. And it cleans itself up over time. There's microbes that eat it. It might take 150 years, but it will be gone, naturally occurring. But instead, we're going to go take heavy yellow iron, big excavators, diesel-powered equipment, trucks, the fuel for the trucks, the tires, and we're going to dig up this 150 gallons of fuel in, 2,000 tons of dirt, and all the trucks to get there and back. And then we're going to take that contaminated dirt and we're going to dump it at a landfill to use as top cover. So we're just making contamination from here and moving it here. Or we're going to send it to an old concrete rotary kiln and use fuel to burn the contaminants out of the dirt. Then now we've sterilized the dirt and it won't grow anything. It looks black like great topsoil. It won't grow anything. So what's the impact to the environment?
Yeah.
By the burning of those fossil fuels and all this other nonsense to dig up 150 gallons of oil that would have cleaned itself up, right?
That's a really...
You don't have me.
Yeah.
And I can give you the same scenarios when it comes to other green technologies. When somebody starts talking to me about electric cars, I always ask them how many lithium battery Superfund sites they've cleaned up. I haven't had anybody tell me they've cleaned up one yet, but I have.
Yeah.
I have. So I understand it at a little bit different level. But anyway, sorry about the
No.
the tirade,
I
but-
want to hear about this now.
So green technologies is just, it's, wow. Okay, here's my analogy. I call it garnishing the turd. I agree that we need to be looking at other things to not impact the environment in the right way, to reduce our reliance on petrochemicals, blah, 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 all that nonsense, right? But I still enjoy cutting down the big tree and the sound a diesel-powered chipper makes when it bogs down, when you're stuffing it through like the Grinch shoving the tree up the chimney and the Grinch, how the Grinch stole Christmas. God, I don't remember.
But battery technology,
battery technologies. I mean, so I don't know. The electric car thing is good, but it's not there yet. And if you start looking at calculations of what it costs to to buy the electricity at these stations to fuel the car, for lack of a better term. Now they're going to New Jersey just put the road tax in. They're charging you a flat fee every year, which we knew was coming because gasoline, the tax on gasoline goes to road repair. So now they're not getting that from these electric vehicles, which are becoming more prevalent. So now they have to fill that money gap. So now they're charging, I don't know, I forget what it is. In New Jersey, I think they're charging like $275 a year for every electric vehicle owner on an annual basis for that.
Interesting. Okay. I didn't know that.
I don't know. I mean, there was an argument in California about, they wanted to leave the wilderness areas natural, and they didn't want them to cut the fire trails in anymore. And, because that was damaging the natural environment. But again, if you look at that from a logical standpoint, if you don't cut those fire trails in, there's no fire breaks. So now when the fire occurs, it takes up more land, which creates more pollution in the atmosphere. So if you look at the impact and the carbon footprints, all this other nonsense that everybody talks about, it's not the reality. And again, it's my ability to look at it from a 50,000 foot elevation rather than from the tree up and go, I own an electric car. I'm doing the greatest thing for the environment.
Right.
And again, not anything. I believe we need to look at these other technologies, but I know where I was going. So back to my garnishing the turd.
Yes. Yep.
I know you're dying to hear this.
Absolutely.
So it's everything sales, right? I mean, it's really all sales, right? They're telling us how great this stuff is. Don't buy the plastic straws because of the sea turtles. I mean, and look, I'm a nut about protecting the ocean. Like, that's the one thing about the environmental movement that pisses me off, when somebody's fucking up the ocean. That makes me mad. You could deforest the rest of the country. I'm okay with that. So it's the spin. It's the spin they put on this crap, right? Like the offshore wind generation windmills are a thing down in the coastal areas now. And, I have my opinions about them too, and it's in the same vein. But they sell us this bag of crap on this stuff. They tell you, buy the electric car because you're doing this great thing for the environment. It's garnishing the turd. You can take a piece of dog shit, put it on a plate, a fancy plate in a really nice restaurant, and garnish it really nicely. You can have the chef come out and tell you about the cooking process and use fancy words. And you put it in front of somebody, and someone's going to eat it.
Yep.
And somebody's going to think it's delicious. It's still just a piece of dog shit on a plate, right? But it's well garnished. And that's so prevalent in everything.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That is universally relevant across all different.
So now you'll think about that. Anytime you go, oh my God, they're garnishing the turd. Right?
Well, I'm just glad that I got rid of my Tesla, because you might beat me up today if I still had it.
So. There's no judgment. I had a Jeep Wrangler. I had it lifted. I got smiles per gallon, not miles per gallon.
Love that phrase.
And I love the Jeep. It was fun. And I had some a-hole pull up next to me in a Prius and mouth off about my gas guzzling thing. And
did he really?
Yeah, I did. And I said, that's interesting. And I asked them, I said, how many lithium battery facilities have you cleaned up? This is at a stoplight. And I got into it a little bit with them, and then the light turned green, we left. But again, it's just public perception, right? I'm a bad guy for driving a Jeep.
Yeah.
A gasoline powered Jeep, and meanwhile they're unknowingly destroying the environment.
Well, right, and again, that's pretty much universally relevant. Also, that anybody that believes they are self-righteous and they are, doing the right thing, they usually never dig past the surface.
Right.
So they just want to virtue signal and be like, I am doing the right thing, and you are a piece of shit for not doing the right thing.
You're a horrible human being.
Yep.
I don't use plastic straws. However, everything I buy at the store is in plastic packaging.
Yeah,
and that's okay.
Now we have
and that's
paper straws wrapped in plastic.
Right, that's okay. Yeah, that's okay.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else that
I think we've covered a wide?
We have covered a lot. We have covered a lot. But is there anything else that you want to plug? Anything else that you want to put out there? Where can people find you on social media?
Facebook, Instagram. I am on LinkedIn. I'll tell you, my passion is on the real estate side. My passion is really for the coastal areas.
So anybody that's looking
If you're looking
to
for a
buy,
second home,
yeah,
beach home, from Brigantine down to Cape May. I mean, Ocean City, I absolutely know like the back of my hand. But I again, surfing for 50 years, I've surfed in all those towns. I'm there in the storm, so I know where they flood, right?
touche.
So that's, I mean, there's things that people don't know or don't understand when they're buying down there. Like I took a guy to look at a property down there, and it was a bayfront home. I said, let's go at low tide. He said, okay, why? I said, because I want to see the pilings on the dock, right? Because of the bulkhead, right?
Yep.
Because you got to replace a bulkhead, that might be $100,000.
Is that what it would cost?
It could be. I mean, and the technology that they're using for bulkheads now, that the plastic interlocking sheet pile, I've used that sheet pile before. I know how you install it. I know the whole deal, right? And so you got to look at those things, right? But
yeah.
Here's the common agent in those areas. They don't know this stuff,
Right.
And if they do, they're not going to say it for the most part.
They don't want the deal to fall
But
apart.
most of the time it's because they don't know, and that's. I had an agent. Sorry to keep running on.
No,
here.
please.
I had an agent on the opposite side of a deal I did in Ocean City, and he was trying to out Ocean City me with his knowledge of, he'd been there for 20 years, and I'm like, I've been here for 50 plus. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff I know, and just from being down there and living down there and surfing and fishing and boating and everything down there, there's stuff I know that I should win a trivia game, I guess, right? But there's helpful knowledge there. I did a quick reel about an area that floods, and down there, that because full moon, high tide, and floods every time there's a full moon, high tide. But if you're buying there, you wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah, how would you know that?
Because I was down there and I was showing a buyer a property that was, $2 million plus, new construction. You're going to take a kayak to your house every time it rains.
Yeah.
So
yeah, having somebody in
Somebody
the
that
know
knows.
that
Yep.
cares is the most important
Huge.
thing.
Just huge.
And they should reach out to you.
I would love
Buy that beach house.
I
Buy
would
that
love
beach
yes.
house.
Get me down there.
One of these days that, I am ready to buy a beach house, we're going to go hunting, baby. We're going to go hunting.
Love it.
Greg, I appreciate you coming on. This has been awesome. I think
pleasure.
you shared a lot of insight and wisdom.
I hope I provided some value. But maybe in all of this, there's one piece of wisdom that'll help somebody. And that's my dream of my pebble.
I am sure there is, because I can tell you that I know I got some out of it. I'm sure somebody else will as well.
Awesome.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, man. Always a pleasure.